Okay guys, today I want to discuss the suitability of conjugate training as a method for ex-bodybuilders looking to convert into the realm of powerlifting. Okay, so bodybuilders versus powerlifters, what is the difference? Well, fundamentally, bodybuilders are focused with one thing, and that is in building more lean muscle tissue. And although they are strong by standards compared to the general population, their strength ratios are relatively low when compared to powerlifters. So there is some strength effect from their training, but fundamentally it's a suboptimal side effect of the pursuit of building more tissue. Conversely, powerlifters are muscular by daily standards, but their strength ratios are much higher because they train neuromuscular facets in addition to purely muscular as seen in bodybuilders. So their muscle is far more conditioned, their whole systems are far more conditioned to lifting large loads. And although strength gains do come as a side effect of such training styles, it's not the primary focus. Okay, so what's missing then in a bodybuilder's repertoire to induce high strength ratios, and how is this solved? So I like to use a car analogy. Think of bodybuilders like cars with huge engines, but very little attention paid to the aerodynamics, poor tires, so lacking traction, and a poor gearbox. All the strength potential is there. They have huge engines, but it's all those additional components which enable the car to put the power down and be quick, which are missing. So I like to think of a new training program or perhaps a conjugate strength training program, almost like a stage 3 remap, where we have things like ECU retuning, we have downpipes, intercoolers, etc., brought into the car system to enable the car's engine power to be actualized and converted into real performance. So when we move from a bodybuilding style of training into a powerlifting style of training, the necessary components associated with maximizing the potential, the strength potential of lean tissue are addressed, and conjugate training offers a really effective means to do this in a systematic manner. So let's start by defining conjugate training. So it means different things in different contexts. In this context, it means training multiple facets concurrently or at the same time. So it's really effective at training numerous qualities at the same time. And although these qualities differ, they tend to share an overriding outcome. In the instance of bodybuilding, that's more muscle tissue, and in the instance of powerlifting, that's more strength or power. And fundamentally, powerlifters utilize conjugate training, but bodybuilders will utilize conjugate training as well. In the context of bodybuilding, conjugate training style relates to different means that we can train muscle to induce muscle growth. And we're talking about inducing muscle growth through 3 primary pathways. And a lot of trainees will utilize these at the same time, i.e. in a conjugate manner. And they include metabolic training, where we're using high repetitions to induce large amounts of metabolic stress. Mechanical tension training, where we're using larger loads to elicit down signaling of growth. And then finally, eccentric loading, which focuses, or is most synonymous with muscle damage, which offers a 3rd pathway to elicit a growth response. So all these things serve to increase muscle mass. They are used at the same time, and thus this can be described as a conjugate style of training within bodybuilding. So neurological adaptations do occur in this towards strength, but it happens on a suboptimal level. Hence, bodybuilders are strong relative to the population generally, but not in relation or when comparing to strength athletes. I will say this, however, bodybuilders sometimes will utilize strength phases specifically, either to increase work capacity of subsequent phases, or to bring variety into their training, or when focusing on myofibril hypertrophy as compared to sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, where they use more of a mechanical tension training method aforementioned. So what does it look like in powerlifting? Okay, so here, everything in the training program is geared towards building more strength. And fundamentally, we're trying to build the qualities of max strength, strength speed, power, speed strength, and speed, all in a bid to optimize platform performance, i.e. to lift bigger loads. And the conjugate training here focuses on 3 work regimes. Max effort work, where we're lifting with 90% plus 1 rep max. in singles, doubles, and triples, for instance. Repetition effort, which more closely resembles hypertrophic training. So that's kind of your 8 to 12 plus repetitions to build more muscle mass as an indirect precursor to building more strength. And then finally, dynamic effort work, where we're trying to build the quality of power by increasing neuromuscular adaptation, or perhaps targeting is a better word, neuromuscular adaptation to improve neural drive. Okay, so neural drive describes all these adaptations that happen as a result of power training. It relates to things like increasing motor unit firing frequency, synchronization of motor unit firing, heightened motor unit threshold sensitivity, and improved intermuscular coordination. The other component which exists within a powerlifting conjugate system is an emphasis on the technical component to optimize kinetics for more efficient kinematics. So the technical component exists in bodybuilding too. So it's not a huge leap. It's just a nuance here. But fundamentally, bodybuilders aim to make a lightweight feel heavy, and a powerlifter aims to make a heavyweight feel light. So this necessitates a huge paradigm shift and forces extensive skill acquisition or relearning, particularly of the squat, bench, and deadlift. But also, importantly, the athlete is required to focus more now on joint action cueing in place of muscle action cueing. But also, they need to learn to integrate external cues to increase or improve their platform performance. Okay, so suitability, let's get down to it now. Okay, the suitability of conjugate training for converts. Lots and lots of pros of conjugate training for those looking to enter into powerlifting training from a bodybuilding background. So the transition requires numerous facets to be targeted, and conjugate training offers a nice and neat organized method to do so. We can train lots of qualities at the same time. It actually allows more rapid peaking because we're not breaking down into a typical block periodized, we're not resigned to a block periodized manner. So we can always be exercising certain qualities at the same time, so that with a shorter peaking cycle, we can reach peak fitness for competitions. It offers scope for acclimation because we integrate several different training modes, and some are in parallel to bodybuilding. We can gradually bring bodybuilders into a traditional powerlifting conjugate training model. Because we're training so many things at the same time, we can realize progression quickly. And the whole system is really good at alleviating or preventing tedium. It's interesting, there's lots of things to be done. In terms of the cons, it does require extensive skills to be learned, and this can be quite stressful. It's psychologically and physiologically demanding as a result, as we're requiring or asking a lot of adaptation to occur. There's that psychological impact here of less training to failure. Bodybuilders love training to failure. Leaving more reps in reserve is a bit strange for bodybuilders, and also training with less volume and getting less of a pump, and integrating less isolation and accessory work. There's also the added stress here of using heavier loads, which bodybuilders' bodies may not be conditioned to, and this imposes new stresses on joints, tendons, ligaments, etc. So this necessitates an acclimation process. So we need to gradually transition, and this means that we don't just flip the balance from a hypertrophic emphasis 100% straight away into a strength emphasis. We need to preserve the physical and the physiological well-being while still migrating towards better strength adaptation along the way. So in the following, I'm going to propose a 12-week protocol to ensure this acclimation process occurs smoothly. So in week 1, 2, and 3, we're looking to use a bodybuilding split and begin to remodel and amend the technique of the big three within high repetition sets to aid mass practice. In weeks 4, 5, and 6, we can integrate mechanical tension with higher percentages, so lifting larger loads in conjunction with amending technique. And then in week 7, 8, and 9, we can introduce some dynamic effort work where we are bringing more speed into the training and cueing bar speed whilst preserving technique. In week 10, 11, and 12, we bring it all together. We remodel the split to an SBD setup, and we integrate dynamic effort work, repetition work, and filter in heavier maximal effort work gradually. And then week 13 plus, we're looking at a full SBD setup. Repetition work becomes accessory work, and we emphasize maximal effort lifting, dynamic effort, and technical work. It's as per in a traditional conjugate powerlifting model. So let's quickly go through some of the conclusions here, guys. So bodybuilders will of course be accustomed to a conjugate system within their own training. And that plays out in the form of metabolic training, eccentric loading, and mechanical tensions. They're used to this setup already of training numerous qualities at the same time towards the overriding feature of increasing muscle mass. So that acclimation process doesn't call upon utilizing a new system, it's just nuances in that system when moving from bodybuilding to powerlifting. So that's a real pro here. The common goal here remains the same. It's still about progressive overload, it's still about pushing one's body, it's still a sense of progression throughout the whole process. So on a psychological basis, as long as the bodybuilder can make a comparison between starting at A and moving towards B via a systematic approach, the buy-in is generally going to be quite good. Conjugate training offers a well-organised solution to hitting all markers necessary to aid new training specificity and optimise performance towards new desired outcomes. So this again relates to that idea that in the past, bodybuilders are aiming exclusively to build more muscle mass. Now the transition is on building more strength. And so the conjugate system is really effective in realigning the process towards the outcome that we are seeking. A really critical point here, guys, an acclimation process is critical for bodybuilders to preserve physical and psychological well-being, as well as to aid efficient strength gains. So the acclimation process is obviously there so that people don't get hurt, they don't lose interest, and the whole process occurs smoothly, but also it's the most efficient means of achieving strength gains. We're much better off playing one card at a time than playing all cards at the same time. So what we can get again then is better buy-in by saying, look, we're going to change this one element in your training, you'll see strength gains from this. Now we're going to bring in the next thing, which may be dynamic effort work. Now we're going to bring in the next thing, which might be more emphasis on the technical component, and so on and so forth. References are as follows, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation.